Hey guys, what's up? It's Katrina, aka Ninni, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how I dealt with my grief. So let's just get one thing straight. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a life coach. I'm just really sharing with you guys my experiences dealing with my grief. So I'm not saying that all these things are going to work for you. You really do have to find, through like trial and error really, what's going to work and what's not going to work in terms of dealing with your grief. I might not remember all the things that I tried to help me, but I think I'm remembering all like the big ones. So let's just start with something that I didn't do to try to help me deal or cope with my grief. I worked at a bar when Michael passed, and I still do, just a different one now. And I get having a few drinks when you're out with friends and stuff like that, because when something really bad happens, something really good happens, what do? You get together with your friends and you have a few drinks and you talk about it. But it's really easy when you're in a really dark spot to let those few drinks with friends end up being you just full out binge drinking and really trying to numb yourself to help you deal with the pain. Because I'll tell you, numbing yourself, it's not going to work because you can't hide from your pain forever because it'll find you. And that was something my counselor would bring up with me because she knew I worked at a bar, especially because I worked at a bar. It's very easy to fall into bad habits when you're in the industry. But I never really let it get out of hand, fully acknowledging that I did drink and I still do drink, but I don't think that I was really using it in such a way that I would just constantly be drunk all the time. And she had every right to bring that up with me. And if you have people in your life that are checking in with you in that way, please try your best not to get so mad at them because they really just are looking out for your best interest and they just want you to be okay ultimately. If it's something that you have thought about without somebody trying to tell you that you should be watching, maybe take this as a sign that you need to take a few step backs from that life and really work on you and what's happening with you right now. Seek help if you have to. Bring it up with your counselor or your support group or your friends or your family, okay? Just please promise me you won't try to numb your pain forever. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to talk about things that I did do. First and foremost, and this is something that I talk about in a few of my videos, but going to counseling was probably the biggest way I helped myself deal and cope with my grief. I mentioned in another video how like my mom had to come into my room and she sat down on my bed next to me and was just like, Nin, it's time that we call. We got to make this happen now. And luckily I got right through when I called the Canadian Mental Health Association. So that was probably the biggest thing. So I went through a round of individual counseling with just me and my counselor before she put me into group counseling. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, going to counseling was the first time in my grief that I actually felt normal. I didn't feel so judged for what I was experiencing, and maybe I judged myself a little less for what I was experiencing. Because it is hard when you go through this because it's not something that you've experienced before. So when you see yourself acting differently and you really can't help it, you do get in this mindset and you start to really judge yourself and get down on yourself that you're not acting like you were before, that you're not doing the things that you did before. It's really hard and it's a lot of work too to give yourself some patience and show yourself love in that way, to allow yourself time to grieve and allow yourself time to deal with what's internally happening with you. If you're watching this, if you haven't sought counseling or therapy in any way, I really, really do suggest it. One of my biggest fears, I think, with counseling, I was afraid my counselor was going to prescribe me a bunch of drugs, medications to help me deal with my anxiety and depression now. And when I learned that wasn't the case with counseling, I felt a weight lifted because I didn't want medication. I really don't think, just in a general sense, when you're not dealing with grief, I don't think that medication is always the best answer. I think you can do a lot for yourself just through yoga and meditation. And that might seem kind of hippy dippy to some people, but there are actually studies out there that meditation can rewire your brain. What? That's insane. Just sitting and trying to control your thoughts can actually rewire your brain to help you deal with anxiety and stress and depression. I think that's insane. So I was just really worried about that. So I was really happy to know that wasn't going to be the case. I also was afraid to talk out loud about what happened, because I think that was a large part of my like shock and denial about things. I didn't want to express like what happened to Michael and how he passed, because doing that was just admitting that he was no longer here. And I didn't want to do that because I didn't want a life without him. I didn't want to really believe that he wasn't here anymore. So that was another thing that if you are the same way, I'm sorry, but in counseling, you do have to talk about what happened. And that's another way that you help deal with your grief, is by talking about it. I got to tell you, I really wasn't expecting how much these videos would help me deal with my own stuff, even 4 years later. I just having like certain breakthroughs about things, and definitely feel like just every day this like the weight from the anxiety that I have now because of what happened just kind of like dissipate bit by bit. That's pretty cool. So I can say from firsthand experience that it's really shitty to talk about at first, but in the end, it so totally helps you, because you're really just, it's like a ball of energy just like stuck inside you when you can't express. And I said it in a video a couple weeks ago too, like, don't make people feel bad that you want to talk about the person that you lost, because you have every freaking right to. Like, I validate you in that you want to bring them up in conversation, or bring her up in conversation, whoever you lost, you have every right to do so. Talking about it is a way to help deal with your grief. Super, super important. And that's why I think a lot of people will suggest that you journal, because I had a lot of people suggest that for myself, but it was really hard for me to journal at first, because again, I didn't want to talk about what happened, and journaling was the same thing. I didn't want to have to even write it down. That felt like, again, like a crack in my denial, and I wasn't ready to face it all. But eventually, like, I did journal, and now I do journal when I feel like inspired to, or when I know I have extra things to work out. And I think I really got into it when, so I got really heavily, I was always into astrology, but I really got into astrology after Michael passed, because I really got into the universe and like what happens after we die, because I really needed to know all the things. So with certain, if you follow astrology, you know that there's full moons, new moons. And when these full moons or new moons happen, they happen in a certain astrological sign. And that certain astrological sign mixed with whatever moon is happening at the time can bring up certain emotions and feelings. There's actually the new moon coming up in Libra, I think. And Libra falls in the 7th house of relationships. I know, try not to get so lost. I really don't want to lose you here. But maybe that new moon talking about relationships is that, and that's what that's bringing up for you, and like whatever's happening with you and your relationships. So sometimes I would like sit outside during the summer, during a new moon or a full moon, and think about the things that phase is bringing up, and try to journal about those certain things and what I was feeling based on like what was happening internally. I'm sorry, I'm really not explaining this that well, and I'm really sorry, but like, that's how I think I really started journaling. I would journal too if I got like really crazy dreams, because I think a lot of you out there can probably attest to the fact that when you are trying to deal with grief, your dreams get super crazy and wonky. So this is my little dream journal. Dreams. And it's not totally full. It's about halfway. I don't know, I have really vivid dreams. I even got one of these, little dream dictionary, because I would love to look up whatever sign I saw. I don't know, I think dreams really do give you an insight into like your subconscious mind. I think I read one time that what you dream about is your subconscious mind trying to make sense of what happens in your conscious mind. So when you're waking, which makes a lot of sense. So yeah, dream journaling. And then I would journal about when it first happened. I wasn't necessarily journaling, but I remember writing down point form things of like memories that Michael and I had, so I wouldn't forget them. And I think journaling also works too, because it's a form of meditation. There's so many ways that you can cope with your grief. You are dealing with something, and yes, some days it looks like you laying in bed doing nothing, which is doing something. Other days it looks like you doing yoga or meditating or whatever. And maybe you've discovered some ways yourself that have totally helped you deal with your grief. And in the comments below, write something that you do that helps you deal with your grief. I think that'd be really cool if we get responses from that. All right, guys, that's it for this week's video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like this video if you've liked it, leave a comment. I put videos out every week, Wednesdays or Thursdays, kind of depends. But regardless, I'll see you guys next week. Love you. Bye.